Muzdalifah is nothing but to stay the night. Okay. Again, we will do our niyyah there, and you're just supposed to stay there for a portion of the night. This is the place where we will collect our 70 pebbles that we will use to stone in Mina. Okay. Ladies are not required to stay in Muzdalifah until sunrise. They are allowed to leave early. So what will happen generally is that they will arrive in Muzdalifah, they will collect their pebbles, and then with the organizers will take them into Mina, because they're allowed, the volunteers are allowed to take them earlier, and will help them perform their rami, which is their stoning of shaitan, early that day before the crowds begin. Okay. The rules of Masail allow this, and so we encourage ladies to do this because it's easier for us to manage the crowds that way. You'll see how large the crowds are, and this is just a logistical challenge for us, and so this is what we've found works the best in so many years. For men, we are required to be in Muzdalifah until sunrise. Okay, so we cannot, unless you're ill or you're elderly, in which case you can leave with the ladies. But otherwise, if you're able-bodied, you have no choice but to stay until sunrise. Okay. Now, what generally will happen is we'll pray our Fajr in Muzdalifah, and then we'll begin walking towards Mina. Okay. The buses will take forever, and so we walk. Okay. And Habiba, inshallah, will cover all of the distances that we're going to be walking, because there's a lot of walking that needs to happen. We will walk towards the outskirts of Mina. As soon as it is sunrise, we will enter into Mina. Okay, so until then, we are in Muzdalifah. We will have picked our 70 pebbles. Now it is the day of Eid. Right? It is the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. Everybody here is getting ready to go to the mosque for namaz. We have 3 rituals that are required for the day of Eid. Okay. The first is Rami. Okay. Rami meaning stoning of the Jamarat. We're only stoning one of those pillars on Eid day, okay, with 7 pebbles. It's called Jamaratul Aqaba, the third one. Okay, when you enter into that structure, you'll see a first pillar, second pillar, third pillar. Nobody is stoning the first and second pillar on Eid day. It's completely quiet. Okay, and so if you stone that one, you'll stone the wrong one. The third one is the one where there is massive crowds. Okay, and people are throwing their shoes and slippers from 50 feet away. Okay. As soon as they see the pillar, they think they have a good arm, and they think they can get it there. Impossible. Okay. But inshallah, we'll talk about the technique. It's very possible to go around from the back end and get to right in front of the stone and strike your 7 pebbles and hit and see all of them strike. Okay. It's that easy. Okay. But you need to follow the technique. Okay. So on the day of Eid, we stone 1 Jamarat. Okay, Jamaratul Aqaba. The stones, again, we're throwing 7 pebbles. Each one of them must be thrown by hand. So you throw one at a time, and you see them strike. Okay, you need to be certain that they struck. Okay, if you didn't see it, that's okay. If you knew that the tangent at which you threw the pebble, it's going to strike the wall. Okay, you're certain that it struck, even if you didn't see it. But it's actually possible to see your 7 pebbles strike. The pillar as we have it today is elongated, okay? And so the recommendation is that you aim towards the center of that structure as best you can, okay? Because that represents the original structure of Jamarat. Now they've extended it only for convenience, because there are millions of people performing Jamarat. It's a multi-story structure again. We're only allowed to be on the main floor. And just otherwise, in the olden days, pebbles would be thrown from both directions. People would get hurt. This way, it's an elongated pillar. We aim for the middle as best we can. Okay. Again, certainty about the number of pebbles that have struck. You need to be certain that 7 have struck. Okay. So this is what the wall looks like. It's a huge wall. We're aiming for the middle, but again, what happens, and you'll see this, is that when you walk around the crowds and you go towards the end of the pillar, it's very quiet there. You're able to get in and then aim for the middle. Okay, and because people tend to want to throw from the beginning. You go around the crowds and you go towards the back end, and it's very easy then, because it's relatively quiet on that end. Okay. Okay, so that's the first ritual on Eid day. Rami, 7 pebbles on the one Jamarat. The ladies will have done that earlier, because they will have come earlier with the volunteers. The second ritual on Eid day is the Qurbani. Okay, I'm going to rush here. Yeah, we're okay for time. Okay. The second ritual on the day of Eid is the sacrifice of the animal. Okay. Now, our group is unique in that we actually take men who are willing to come with us to do our own Qurbani. Okay. Most other groups, you sit in the tent and you wait for the phone call to come. Okay, your Qurbani is done. Okay, which the ladies will do. Because it's not practical for us to take all the ladies as well. It's very difficult for us to do. But the men, what will happen is that we will walk. Okay, so we form separate groups, and we will walk from our tents in Mina to Jamarat. We will stone, and then in separate groups we will walk towards the Muaysam, which is where the slaughterhouse is. And we will perform our Qurbani ourselves. Okay, and by that I mean that not all of us know how to slaughter an animal. And so the butchers who are there slaughtering the animal, you'll at least be able to perform your niyyah. You put your hand on his hand, and then he looks at you, and you say, yes, I've done my niyyah, and he slaughters. And within a second, it's over, and you move on. Okay? It literally takes a second for him to slaughter an animal. I mean, he'll put it towards Qibla and so on and so forth. If you want, you can give it water. Again, all of these discussions we will have, inshallah, in Makkah before we leave for Arafat. Even the details of the characteristics of the animal and how the meat is distributed, we can leave for Makkah, inshallah. So either we will have performed our own Qurbani for men, some men. For the seniors, for example, if you're not able to walk, because it's a lot of walking, and you may choose not to go for Qurbani, and that's perfectly fine. Ladies will be in the tents waiting for their Qurbani to be completed. Once you get word, for those who are in the tents, that your Qurbani is now done, then the next action, on the third action on the day of Eid, is halaq or taqsir. In the case of ladies, only taqsir. Again, clipping of the hair. In the case of men, once you get word that your Qurbani is done, either someone else did it for you or you did it yourself, you now come back into Mina, and now this is the time when your head is shaved. And this is halaq in the case of men, highly recommended. And in the case of ladies, obviously not allowed for halaq, but taqsir, just the clipping of the hair. And that's it. Those are the three rituals for Eid day. Okay, there's still a few rituals for Hajj, but on Eid day, it's a long day. Okay, you started from Arafat, Muzdalifah, Mina, and it's been an intense day because you're walking in the sun, extremely hot. Finished your Rami, you finished your Qurbani, and you do your halaq, and then you take a shower. The clothes of Ihram come off. Okay, now there are still 3 restrictions that remain. Out of the 25 restrictions, okay, 3 restrictions remain on this day of Eid after your halaq. Number 1, intimacy, all forms of intimacy with one's spouse. That restriction is still present. Use of perfume is still present, and hunting you cannot do in that state as yet. Okay, so these 3 restrictions remain after Eid day's rituals are completed. And we'll talk about when they get lifted. Okay, now having completed this, we will have a few days between that point onwards, or that day, and the day of departure. Okay? Within this time, we're obligated to do another tawaf, the 2 rakat namaz, sa'i, tawaf of Hajj, or tawaf al-Nisa, sorry. This is tawaf of Hajj, tawaf al-Nisa, and 2 rakat namaz. Okay? So there are several days on which you can do this. Some people will go the same night. Some people will go the next day. As a group, over the last several years, we have tended to recommend going the next night. Okay, so now 10th day is over. It's the 11th night. People are exhausted. We suggest everybody take, sleep, shower, eat, sleep. Next morning, you wake up for Fajr. There's some obligations that need to be performed on that day. Again, rest the balance of the day. That night, which is now the 12th night of Dhul Hijjah, after midnight is when we arrange for buses and we go to Haram. Okay, we go to the hotel, drop off our bags, and then go to Haram to perform our tawaf. And generally there's enough time to perform the tawaf, your tawaf of Hajj, your 2 rakat namaz, your sa'i, your tawaf al-Nisa, and your 2 rakat namaz, and be done with all of those rituals in that one night. Okay? And people tend to do it differently, but this is, as a group, this is what we recommend. Okay, but everybody then at that point is now familiar enough with haram, with how to do tawaf. So you're welcome to choose any other day that you want or any other time that you want. But there are certain restrictions that you need to keep in mind. So again, the niyats of tawaf and salat, I'm not going to cover. So this, as I said, it can be performed on any day, from the time until before departure. Okay, these rituals can be performed at any point until departure. But until you perform these rituals, certain of these restrictions remain. Okay, now, and we'll talk about when they get lifted. But there is one exception. Okay, for those who are elderly, or those women who are expecting the onset of their cycle to begin, they are allowed to perform these rituals before they go to Arafat. Okay, it's an exception that is permitted only in certain situations. Okay, for the vast majority of us, it will not apply. We'll have to do that when we come back. But it is an exception. It allows women, for example, to perform their own tawaf as opposed to having someone else do it for them, and even the elderly. Right. When we come back, there are millions of people. Now everybody is there who wants to perform tawaf, right? And so if some senior feels that they cannot do it when they come back, then they can do it earlier, okay? But only you can be your own judge. I mean, it's not an out. It's just if you feel that you can't do it when you come back, then there is an opportunity for you to do it earlier. So after you finish your tawaf of Hajj and your 2 rakat namaz and your sa'i, after the completion of these 3 rituals, the restriction on use of perfume is lifted. Okay? And these 3 rituals must be performed as a unit. Okay? So if you perform your tawaf and your 2 rakat namaz, on the same day, you can take a break, a few hours, but on the same day, you must perform your sa'i. You can park your tawaf on nisa to 3 days later, no problem. But these 3 rituals must be performed together. And once you perform these 3 rituals, then the restriction on fragrance is lifted. Then you have the tawaf nisa and the 2 rakat namaz. Tawaf nisa and 2 rakat namaz, upon completion of these 2 acts, the restriction on intimacy with one's spouse gets lifted. Okay? And so, like I said, it can be performed at any time before departure. Okay? But if one does not perform tawaf nisa, and the 2 rakat namaz that follows, then that restriction on intimacy remains. Okay, so even if you are performing this Hajj, let's say you have performed Hajj before, and now I'm here for my 3rd Hajj, and I've decided that I'm going to do this Hajj for my grandparents. Tawaf nisa is still wajib on me. Okay, which means that if I don't perform tawaf nisa, even though I'm performing this Hajj for my marhum grandparents, that restriction on intimacy is on me, not on them. Okay? So, regardless of who you are performing this Hajj for, you have to do your tawaf nisa before departure and the 2 rakat namaz that follows. So, once you perform these 2 rituals, the restriction of intimacy is lifted, and on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, automatically the restriction on hunting gets lifted. Okay? There's no act, but just on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, the hunting restriction gets lifted. Now, there are a couple of more rituals just to keep in mind. So, in addition to the 3 rituals we talked about on Eid day, okay, in Mina, there is also a requirement of wukuf at Mina. It's called mabit. And we are required to spend 2 half nights in Mina, or the full night, but a minimum of a half night. And that half night is either from Maghrib till like midnight, or from midnight to Fajr, okay? But at least half the night on both the 11th and the 12th, okay? And why it's important to know this is that if you choose to go to Makkah at a point other than the time that the group recommends, you have to remember to come back so that you can finish these 2 obligations, which is spending half the night in Mina on the 11th and the 12th, okay? And so depending on when you go, we'll tell you, okay, if you go now, you have to come back by such and such a time so that you fulfill this obligation. And then after Dhuhr on the 12th, We'll discuss the logistics of this. After Dhuhr on the 12th of Dhul Hijjah, we're able to leave and go back to Makkah. And the other final obligation is that on both the 11th and the 12th of Dhul Hijjah, we have to stone all 3 jamarat with 7 pebbles each. Okay? So again, if you choose to go to Makkah, you have to come back before sunset. If you haven't stoned on that day, come back before sunset in order to stone the 3 jamarat. So there are some technicalities about how you manage your day if you choose to go at a time other than the one that the group is recommending. Okay? And we can discuss those details, inshallah, in Makkah, because it'll become too confusing right now. But you're obligated to stone all 3 jamarats between sunrise and sunset on the 11th and 12th days of Dhul Hajj. On the 10th, we only stone 1 pillar. On the next 2 days, you have to stone all 3 pillars. Again, the rules are the same, 7 pebbles each. You have to make sure that they strike the center of the pillar, and so on and so forth. Okay? I would just say one more thing. As far as Rami is concerned, those 70 pebbles that you strike towards or the pebbles that you strike towards the jamarat, there is symbolism. The symbolism in that is that you are striking at the vices that exist within the human being, within yourself, right? If I know that one of my own weaknesses, one of my own vices is anger or pride, right? Then there has to be that conscious awareness that when I strike this pebble towards the jamarat, I'm striking towards the shaitan, towards the jamarat, because I want to strike towards that vice that exists within me. So that when I leave these lands, I have left these vices here and gone back a new individual. And really, this is the objective of Hajj. That you have to come back a different human being. It's not about the check boxes and saying, okay, all of these checks, all of these rituals are complete. Fine, your Hajj may be fine, may be completed. But at the end of the day, the objective is to come back as a changed human being, having taken something away from these rituals of Hajj that have allowed me to grow as an individual, so that I come back as a changed human being, having completed my Hajj. Okay, so these are the rituals of Hajj Tamattu. Again, very quick recap: Ihram, Wuquf at Arafat, Wuquf at Muzdalifah. On the day of Eid, Rami, which is stoning one of the Jamarat, Qurbani and Halaq, for those 3 rituals for Eid day. Then Tawaf of Hajj, Salat of Tawaf, Sa'i, those 3 as a unit we discussed. Tawaf al-Nisa, 2 rakat namaz that follows the Tawaf al-Nisa. And then staying for half the night on the 11th and 12th night in Mina. And then stoning the Jamarat on the 11th and 12th days, all 3 of them, 7 pebbles each. I'll cover maybe just in 2 minutes, cover the next slides, and then I'll pass it on to Habibai. I'm not sure which airlines we're planning to use this year in our journey, but generally when we travel from here towards the Middle East, we're traveling in the direction of Qibla. And so obviously, we should be praying on the plane when it's time for Salat. And if you are not going to arrive at your destination, if you're going to arrive at your destination and namaz will have become qaza, then you're obviously obligated to pray on the plane. Okay, and because we are traveling in the direction of Qibla, it's very easy to pray. I mean, generally you'll find the entire plane is filled with Hajis. They'll give you space to pray at the back. If not, you can pray while seated, and you're praying in the direction of Qibla, not a problem. Okay, on the way back, Qibla is in the opposite direction. Okay, you can ask for the stewardess. She'll generally give you permission to pray if you pray, a couple people at a time. Otherwise, you're obligated to at least do your takbiratul ihram facing Qibla, and then you can pray while seated, even though you're praying in the opposite direction. Okay, that's exception. Okay, but you're allowed to do that, but you must pray before namaz becomes qada. In Makkah and Medina, although we will be there for less than 10 days, because they are considered to be spiritual watan, you're allowed to pray. You're not required, but you're allowed to pray full. Okay, whether you pray in the hotel, which we recommend that you don't because you're so close to Haram, but when you go to Masjid al-Nabi or Masjid al-Haram, you pray full. Okay, even though we're there less than 10 days. Congregational prayers, as far as Sayyid Sistani is concerned, he doesn't consider the Imam of Jama'ah in Medina and Mecca to be a qualified Imam, and therefore we pray shoulder to shoulder with Ahl Sunnah, but we pray with the Furada Niyat. For those who are Muqallideen of the Rahbar, Agha Khamenei, he allows his Muqallideen to pray by Jama'ah, okay, with Jama'at, and so they're allowed to pray with the Niyah of Jama'ah with the Ahl Sunnah. Generally, the Ahl Sunnah Imam recites a long passage of the Quran instead of a second surah, and so you have a variety of options. You recite your own second surah if you're reciting Furada, and then you can either listen to him for the balance of his recitation, or you follow along. If he's reciting a surah that you're familiar with, sometimes he recites Waqi'ah or he recites Yasin, you follow along, or you just listen quietly, or you do dhikr, Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and so on and so forth, while he's reciting his second passage, and then you continue on with him. Timing of Salat, we generally are okay with their timing of Salat, both for Fajr and Dhuhr. The only issue where we have a little bit of a difference is Maghrib. We consider the timing of Maghrib to be slightly different from them, and so there's about a 15-minute difference. And so you have to watch the clock. When the adhan is given, their adhan is given, if the Imam starts namaz before 15 minutes have elapsed, you stand up and you pray maybe a qada Maghrib prayers, but then you have to pray again. Okay? If 15 minutes have passed, no problem. Then you pray and you pray your Maghrib namaz and it's time. In Makkah, as you get close to Hajj season, they don't wait for too long because of the crowds. They want to get tawaf started again. So close to Hajj time, you will find that there's not enough time. Okay, you stand up, you pray a qada Maghrib prayers, and then when he's done, you pray a Maghrib again. Okay. Sajda, in Medina they have closed the gaps. Marble floor is possible to find, but they have put carpets strategically so that they know, because they know that we tend to do sajda on marble floor, and so the spaces for marble floor are available but limited. So if you get there early enough, you can pray on without a problem. But there's also a musalla, I believe, that will be circulating this year that has a straw mat. You can use that to perform your sajda. In Makkah, plenty of marble flooring. There's no issue. Okay, and then the last slide is this slide of Salatul Mayyit. Okay, you will find that pretty much after every namaz there'll be namaz al-mayyit. They'll announce there'll be namaz al-mayyit for certain number of people or certain number of children, and so on and so forth. Out of respect, if you're there in the haram to pray, you stand up for namaz al-mayyit. Okay, now their form of namaz al-mayyit is different from ours. Okay, ours has 5 takbirat, theirs has 4, but there's a very simple method of performing namaz al-mayyit. Okay, I know when we recite namaz al-mayyit here, there are the long dhikr that are recited, that are fine, but the essential requirements of namaz al-mayyit are only very brief. The first is you do your niyyah that you're reciting namaz al-mayyit for the individual that you're performing namaz al-mayyit for. You do your takbir, then ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadar rasulullah. Okay, basically your kalima is the first phrase, then Allahu Akbar, then salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Then you do the next takbir, and then Allahumma ghfir lil mu'minina wal mu'minat. And then then you do next takbir, and then Allahumma ghfir li hadal mayyit. Okay, very straightforward. I think maybe these slides can be circulated so that you can have this. But if not, this is straight out of the Risala of Sayyid Sistani. And then you do your 5th takbir, and Salatul Mayyit is complete. Okay. We take questions now. Okay, Pachi. Okay. So I think we're taking a break, and then inshallah we'll take questions.
Can we have a loud salawat for Akil, please?